All right, so we're going to be doing both motor mounts on this vehicle. If for some reason you're only doing one, then just follow the instructions for that corresponding side. Now, to start doing this job, one of the first things that you need to do is disconnect your negative battery terminal. The reason for that is because we want to make sure that nothing goes on electrical when we're dealing with these motor mounts. Use your 10mm, come right under here. We're just going to loosen up this nut, then we'll lift the terminal up and off of there and set it aside so there's no way it can touch up against that battery. The next thing we're going to do is grab onto this, lift it straight up, and then draw it towards you and set it aside. Use an 8mm or a flathead screwdriver to loosen up your clamps. You'll have one here and one there. If you were to grab onto this right here, it should just pull right out. Now if you come right down along here, you're going to have a little push clip that's holding your radiator hoses up. Just kind of grab onto it, give it a little push. Now I'm going to grab this, draw it towards me and up at the same time. We'll get it off of here. Set it aside. Take a small pry bar and we're going to take off this center cap. If you were to spin it, you're going to see a little notch in the cap. Just carefully slide this off of here. That exposes our 22mm lug nuts. Remove all 6. Remove your wheel. Okay, let's take off the other wheel. Now with the wheel off, you have a clear view of what's going on here. If you wanted to, you can remove your plastic fender liner here, and that'll give you a little bit more room. But theoretically, if you just move it around, it should get right out of the way. The next thing we're going to do is remove our bolt that holds our level sensors. Okay, use your 13mm. Just set this aside so it's out of the way. Look at that nice big hole we have now. Do the same to the other side of the vehicle. There we are, set that aside. All right, so here's what our motor mount's gonna look like. If you were to look down, you see the steering shaft, you'll see the manifold, and below that, you're gonna see the shield for the motor mount. You're gonna see a bolt here, one over there towards the front, and then one over towards the rear. That's holding the motor mount down to the frame. We're gonna remove all 3 of those using a 15mm. If you were to use a 15mm swivel and a nice long extension, you can get right down in here like this, put it right on there. Do the same to all 3. Now if you're doing both motor mounts, you do the same to the other side of the vehicle. Now if you wanted to, you can come through the wheel well to get this one out. The next thing that we're going to do is remove the heat shield for our manifold. Some of these bolts may break, but just be careful about it and use a 10mm to remove all 5 on the driver's side. And then if you're doing the passenger side as well, you would remove the 6 bolts on that side. This one should come out of the way fairly easily. The passenger side might not come out of the way like that. The next thing we're going to have to do is coming from underneath the vehicle, you're going to remove your starter. Assuming you've disconnected your battery, as I stated as the first step, we're going to go ahead and remove this bolt and that one right there. Then we'll slide the starter out of the transmission bell housing and then just bring it down so it's out of the way. Let's go ahead and remove this anchor bolt. That's going to make it so this cable can move around. Slide this right down here. Now it's nice and out of the way. Awesome. One of the next things we're going to need to do is to try to jack up the engine a little bit so we'll be able to get to those engine mounts. The way that we're going to want to do it is by coming right under here. I'm going to use a nice piece of wood and a jack and lift it up slowly and carefully. I want to try to do it right near the edge here or the corner. That way there I'm not going to cause any damage to anything. Just going to carefully get that wood right on the edge of that oil pan. You definitely don't want to do it with anything metal. Now we're going to jack up, and this should start lifting up the engine. Now as you jack up, you want to keep paying attention to this area right along here to make sure that your engine does not press up against this part of your cowl, because of course you could cause damage. Feels good right about there. Now if you look down through the wheel well, you're going to be able to see all 4 of the bolts going through the mount and into the engine. One over here, one up in this corner, down over there, and another one over there. If you have a hard time getting to them, just go ahead and grab this plate, lift it up a little bit, and that should give you a little bit more access. And then of course you can flex it as needed to get the rest of the bolts. There we are. Hit the ground. It's a good sign. And we can move this around. The next thing we want to do is find the oil dipstick, which is this one right here. Follow that tube down and find the mounting bolt. We're going to remove that 15mm mounting bolt. Wiggle the dipstick tube around. There we are. Let's get this to this point here. Now I'm just going to try to spin it. Now we're going to remove the bolts, or the nuts I should say, that hold this top bracket with the shield to the bottom area. Use your 15mm from this side. So now with that off of there, you should be able to separate these pieces. This is the part that was hanging us up, this shield right here, which is super important by the way. There we are, friends. So now it's going to be time to install our new mount. If you were to look right here, this was the main issue why we were struggling so much to get it out of the frame, because as we tried to lift up, we were hitting against the manifold and it just wouldn't let this come out and around through the frame. So what we're going to have to do, I like to mark it so I know exactly how things are going to line back up. And then we're going to remove these nuts just like we did on the original one. And we're going to put it back together while it's inside the vehicle. It's going to be much easier than trying to fit this whole big old thing in there. Let's get ready for our install here. Just sort of up in there the way I got it out. Okay. I'm going to turn this so it's facing in the exact direction as when I took the original one apart, because obviously it's going to be easiest to get it back into its original position from that point. Now we'll start piecing the rest of it together. This job would be a lot easier if it didn't have this shield, but it's ultra important to have it on there, so don't skip putting it back on. Just try to line up those studs with the holes in the shield. Okay. Just like this. Slide that on there like that. Take our 2 locking nuts. Start them both on there. Make sure you tighten them up. Get these snug. I'm just going to double check them here. Just going to have to wedge the mount in to make sure it can't move too much on you. That one's definitely tight. Oh yeah, definitely tight. Let's go ahead and spin this up into the position that it needs to be in to mount it to the vehicle. Next, we're just going to have a second person carefully pry up against the engine, against the manifold and the frame, and just try to move it over. There we go. Slid right in. All right, so let's pause here and go do the same to the other side. Now, if you want to make it so you have more room to be able to get inside here, you can remove this plastic fender liner. Use a 7mm to remove all of the bolts that go around. And you're also going to notice that there's push clips. To get those out, you can use one of these forky tools or whatever you've got that you think will work. So now with this flopping around, we're going to continue with our forky tool and just get all these little press clips out of here. I'm just going to carefully use some cutters, see if I can grab onto here. Just try to work it out of there. There we are. Cool. Okay, so I got my socket in there. There's our first bolt. Do the same to all the rest. Well, you might need a setup that looks a lot like this. There's bolt number 2. Getting the concoction on here is the hardest part. Here, bolt number 3. Nice. Come on. Oh, moved quite a bit. And I can get to the back side. You can. There it is. Okay, it should be ready to separate now.
Let go of the pry bar.
Clear. Whoa, look at this. Got a problem right there. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your steering wheel is in the locked position. You want to make sure it cannot spin. All right, if it can, you need to make sure you secure it. You can do that with something as simple as a bungee cord. Next, we're going to use our 11mm, and we're going to take out the lower bolt that holds the steering shaft to the power steering rack. If you move up the rack, the next bolt we're going to remove is this one up here. That's the one that leads from the center shaft to the upper shaft. It has this little dongle on there. The next thing we need to do is come from underneath, and you can either use a pry bar or an air chisel, whatever you have, but we need to get the steering shaft to come up off of the power steering rack. So I'm just going to kind of lightly tap on it. If you want to use some penetrant, it's probably going to be helpful. So now with the steering shaft completely in the downward telescoped position, we're just going to try to bonk down on this a little bit to try to separate the intermediate shaft from the upper shaft. Okay, it's coming right off. This out of here. So now that I test fitted how this is going to get back into the vehicle, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I tighten this back up. And try to get this down in here. Okay. If you happen to bonk anything loose, just make sure you have it resecured. Alright, so now with the engine mount nice and loose, we're just going to go ahead and start in the bolts that go from the mount to the engine. Alright, that's started in as well. Before we tighten anything down, let's go ahead over and do the other side. All right, all 4 are started on this side as well. Let's go ahead and snug them up. Nice. Now we're going to do the same to this side. Nice. Tight. Nice and tight. Awesome. Now it's time to get these lower bolts in from the mount to the frame. We're going to do the same to the other side, then we'll lower the engine, and then we'll snug them up. All lower mount bolts are started in. At this point, we're going to lower the engine all the way down. Now we're just going to lower that engine back down. Nice and easy. Just double check them with a ratchet, make sure they're all tight. Now we're on the other side, let's snug them up. Let's check them all with a ratchet. Tight. Now we're just going to torque down the bolts that hold the mount to the engine to 37 foot-pounds. Do the same to all. Now that we've torqued down those bolts, we're going to torque down the bolts that hold the mount to the frame. Torque those to 48 foot-pounds. Do the same to all. All right, now that we've finished the driver's side, let's go ahead and torque the passenger side. Now it's going to be time to get this exhaust shield back on here. There we are. Go ahead and start them all in before you tighten any of them down. Now that we have them all started, let's go ahead and snug them up. Grab that last back one with a wrench. That's tight. Let's go do the same to the other shield. Now it's going to be time to get the oil dipstick back in here. It's much easier without the dipstick inserted in the tube. We're going to take it and we're going to go right through the second channel in the manifold there, right along that spark plug wire. Bring this down. We're just going to let it hang like this, and then we're going to work our way into the wheel well. Just line it up. We're going to carefully slide it down. Pay attention to your wire. Make sure you don't give it a tug. Just kind of wiggle it. If you want to use a little bit of penetrant, I would use a very minimal amount, but you shouldn't need any. As you can see, the bolt hole's lined up. This is perfect. Let's go ahead and put that in. Let's go ahead and get our bolt right onto the socket here. Bring it through, and then we'll slide it right into the hole. I always put in as many threads as possible by hand here. Now we're just going to snug it up. That feels good. Let's go ahead and put that oil dipstick back in there. Let's just get this starter line back up in here. There we are. Grab your two bolts. All right, that one's definitely started in. Do the same to the other one. Let's bottom them out. Now torque these to 37 foot-pounds. Now we're going to make sure we secure our starter cable here. Got our little bolt through the hole in the frame. Go ahead and snug that up. Now we're going to make sure we get our level sensor back secured as well. Now it's going to be time to get our steering shaft back up on here. Before I do that, you can try to sand it down a little bit if you felt the need to, but I would definitely use some sort of lubricant or even Never Seas. That's going to help it slide back up on there. We've got our steering shaft here. Down there. Just going to work this back up on. Let's take our bolt, just go right through here. If you want to use a little bit of thread locker, we'll call it your prerogative. I'm going to grab it. Start that bolt onto there. Okay, that's snug. Now let's do the bottom. So now we're just going to telescope the steering shaft up so that it lines up with the steering rack here. Right over that shaft on the steering rack. And then just kind of wiggle it around until it slides down and on. There we are. Just work that right down on there. Now we're going to put our lower bolt in. Okay. Now we're going to make sure we torque these. The top bolt is 37 foot-pounds. Torque this lower bolt to 35 foot-pounds. Let's get our level sensor back on this side. Now it's going to be time to get the driver's side panel in here. Just pay special attention to your clip. That's going to go around here. And then, of course, all these have to be resecured back into the plastic. Do that clip first. It's hard to... There we go. Clip that in. Push that through. And then the same down the line. There we are. Let's go ahead and get our plastic clips up in here. So now we're going to grab our wheel well, just bring it up to approximately where it's going to go. We need to make sure we resecure our wiring. So if you were to look, you're going to see a hole right here. Then you should be able to see a little bit of an outline where the next one's going to go. Go ahead and start those in. Push them right on through. If I can find it. There's one. Two. Line this up. Now it's time to get the wheel up on here. Go ahead and start on those lug nuts. And then we'll bottom them out and torque them to 140 foot-pounds. Do the same to the other side of the vehicle. Now it's going to be time to torque the wheels. Torque these lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds. Torqued. Now it's going to be time to put on your vehicle's center cover. If you look at the back, you're going to see something that looks a lot like a valve stem. Line it up with the one on the wheel. Give it a light bonk, and now go ahead and do the same to the other side of the vehicle. Now it's time to get the air intake system back on here. You've got your little piton. Make sure it goes into the dongle there. Just going to line it up, slide it in. Couple light bonks, you can see that it's in. Make sure that this is fully up against the intake right there. This comes over here. Okay. Go ahead and snug up your clamps. Okay, let's make sure we get this plug back in. And then right under here, make sure that you resecure your hoses so they're not hanging down. Let's get our engine cover back on there. Slide it in. Okay. We'll just take a peek at everything. If you notice you have any loose hoses or anything that might have came out of its securing point, just make sure you put it back in. Make sure your dipstick's in. Any hoses, wires, anything that might have gotten dislodged or moved around, just make sure that it's fully secured and it's not anywhere near anything that might get hot, such as your exhaust. Let's go ahead and get our battery terminal back on here. Make sure it's pushed down as far as it can go. Give it a nice wiggle. Make sure it is not loose in any way. We'll just check that positive just because. Perfect.